And on behalf of everyone at the San Diego Writers Festival, we want to welcome you to the second day of our third annual festival and to this next event, Writing for the Screen, a panel moderated by Carlos de los Rios, featuring Gabriel Bologna, Lee Caplin, Tony Griffin, and Scott Myers. This event is sponsored by the Local Writer Spotlight Program. Here to tell us a little bit about it is Carolyn Gilman, one of our wonderful volunteers. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi. Thank
So
you
tell
for
us
having
what,
me.
tell us what is this local writers spotlight?
Sure. I'm excited to talk to you about the San Diego Writers Festival Local Writers Spotlight Program. Our goal is to highlight local writers from all formats and genres of the written word. So if you're a local author, screenwriter, playwright, graphic novelist, poet, or songwriter, we'd love to hear more about you and your work. We're going to be dropping a link to the form in the comments section for people to fill out if you're interested. And those who are selected will be interviewed and featured on our official San Diego Writers Festival blog and our social media channels.
Awesome.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Carolyn. That sounds amazing. And it's a great addition to the San Diego writing community. Just as a quick reminder, as with all of our events, this panel will be recorded and available for viewing on our Facebook page and website, sandiegowritersfestival.com. And we will be featuring a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the Facebook comment section and we will pass them along to the moderator, Carlos,
who I now have the pleasure of introducing. Carlos de los Rios has published 6 books of prose and poetry. He has worked on 30 acclaimed films, 7 of which he has written and produced. He has worked with stars such as Academy Award winner Lauren Bacall, Tony Award winner Harvey Fierstein, Academy Award nominee Elliott Gould, Emmy Award winning Johnny Galecki, Scott Eastwood, and Josh Hutcherson. Carlos lectures throughout California and is a sought-after script doctor, writing coach, and story consultant. Carlos's clients include top Hollywood screenwriters and New York Times best-selling writers. Carlos, welcome. We can't hear you. You're on mute.
See? That's been
happening. How about now?
It's happening today. We can hear you now. That's it. Welcome.
Shaking hands.
All right. We're gonna.
Hi there.
Go. Hi.
What a great day! What a great day this has been. That Tayeri.
Oh my gosh.
Just ridiculous. And of course, the rabbi. Wow.
Love him.
Right.
I've been blown away by today's events, and I can't remember the first girl's name. The African American writer.
Caitlin Greenidge.
Oh gosh, she was fantastic too. What a great day it's been.
It really has. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carlos.
And so much yet to come.
Yeah, right? We're not even done yet. Well, we're going to pass it over to you. And we're going to let you introduce these wonderful panelists, and we're going to sit back and watch.
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. I believe, can I see some panelists? Let's see, let's get some panelists up. Are we going to get their faces up here? Let's see here.
They're coming in. They're bringing them in.
I believe we're missing one for some reason. I haven't seen Tony Griffin show up, but he said he was coming. We'll see if he pops in late, but we'll just work with the 3 fellows we got, because believe me, they're more than enough. There we go. Hey there, Gabriel. Let's see. Let's get a couple more people here. You can put on you don't have to be on mute, Gabe and Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
You guys can take off the mute. And let's wait for Lee. Lee, you can take off your mute. Lee, you can, there we go. There we go. Now we're ready to go. And I don't know where Scott is, but he said he was going to be here, but we'll see when he shows up. So what we're going to do is something very simple here today. We're going to talk about obviously writing for the screen, and it's going to be a very simple format that we're working through, which is basically I'm going to introduce our panelists because they're very esteemed, and I don't even have enough time to describe all their accomplishments. but I'm gonna introduce them. Then second, we're gonna talk about, I'm gonna ask questions from our panelists about sort of the state of the industry right now. Where are we? Because obviously we've had a very strange couple of years, almost unprecedented, as anyone that follows the business knows. And then in the end, we'll kind of wrap up with advice and tips for emerging screenwriters that want to break into the business, because obviously we're a writers festival, we're not a book festival. And so most of our viewers out there are aspiring writers who want to figure out how to get into the business. So again, intros of people, state of the industry, tips and advice for new writers breaking in the industry. Okay, so let me start off by introducing the panelists who are here right now. Lee Caplin, who we're looking at right there. Lee Caplin is the founder of Picture Entertainment Corporation and is its chairman and CEO. Lee has produced many films over the years, including the $115 million budgeted hit movie Ali, starring Will Smith for Sony and Columbia Pictures. He also produced HBO's True Detective, starring Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. And again, those are just a few of his accomplishments. Believe me, I could spend an hour. Gabriel Bologna is a writer-director of many films, including Love Is All There Is, The Theory of the Leisure Class, and is the director of the recent Tango Shalom, which won an award at the Cannes Film Festival. It was picked up for distribution and will debut in theaters soon.
Yep,
and
in September, early September.
In early September, thank you. And he has acted in over 35 projects, film and television. Scott Myers is known for having written K9 with Jim Belushi, the film Alaska, and the film Trojan War, but he's also written all kinds of movies and episodic television. In fact, I believe the phrase is he's written stuff for every studio and every network that there is. And of course, he also runs, he teaches at the DePaul University. I believe that's correct, DePaul, and also has his own blog. What's the name of it again, Scott?
Go into the story.
Go into the story. And he also coaches writers individually and in certain kind of group settings over Zoom and in person. So there's a lot of stuff to look up there. And again, I could go on and on about these guys. You know, Lee Caplin founded the film studies program at CSU MB. You know, Gabe has written all kinds of stuff. In fact, his last film is one, the Tango Shalom, he wrote with his Academy Award nominated father, who recently passed away, unfortunately. Joe Bologna, you know, and Scott Myers has, you know, worked with all kinds of individuals to produce top level material across the spectrum. So I honestly, I can't even, I'm sure, guys, I've left out half of your accomplishments. So I encourage all viewers to go check these guys out and Google them yourselves so you can really see all the stuff they've done. Anyways, the point is we got great film professionals here today. So let's get right into what I want to talk about, state of the industry. So I guess it's impossible to have a program like what we're doing right now with such film professionals without just going straight to the, I mean, it's the white elephant. It's the elephant in the room. It's the 2020 pandemic issue. So this is a question for all of our panelists. How do you think the movie theater closures have hurt the business, and will theatrical recover? Why don't we start with Lee Caplin?
Well, obviously it's hurt the business. For me, it's been impetus to think of new ways to get things filmed and to get actors and actresses involved. And what I was very impressed when I met Spalding Gray years ago through our mutual friend, Tony Bill, who had a Chautauqua at his then very famous restaurant called 72 Market Street that he co-owned with Liza Minnelli and Dudley Moore. And Spalding did his iconic swimming to Cambodia monologue sitting on a stool. And of course, they filmed it as a film, and it was every bit as engaging as any other piece of theater, live or otherwise, that I've ever seen. And that was also the era of My Dinner with Andre, both of which were sort of breakthrough pieces that never were duplicated in quite the same way. But what I found now is I've gone out to actors, I'll just say actors, including actresses, because they're all actors who have things to say and areas of special interest to them, to write pieces that can be filmed in a very limited environment, so that you don't have to go through the craziness that they do now with putting everybody in the motel and testing everybody twice a day and wearing masks in between takes and sort of losing concentration in the character parts and so forth. We're going someplace like Canada, where all the people are supposed to be in Montana, but it's Canada and it doesn't look authentic, and the actors are not American. It doesn't feel authentic, and I don't mean to be xenophobic, but American movies are, unless we're talking about foreign films, American movies sort of are at the forefront of the technology of movie making and sort of the muscularity of movie making.
But do you think that theatrical is going to recover to what it was before, or do you think it's going to have a new form? Because
I think it's
kind of go ahead.
Going to have a new form. I mean, already you're seeing on some of the TV shows where they have people in different places and they stitch them together as if they're in the same place. Of course, it's not authentic and what they're doing, but at some point it's going to be a credit, which it's not down, but it's occupying my time now. So I just founded another school at Florida International University. It's called the Immersive Studio for Altered Reality, and what I'm teaching is augmented and virtual reality filmmaking, not only for entertainment, but for science and law and all sorts of things. But the technology of stitching things together and actors and actresses in different places is becoming very sophisticated. And I think what we're going to see is something that we will begin to accept as the norm. And we won't go picking at it as we do, oh, look what they've done, or look what they're trying to do and not succeeding. I think it's going to be different. Obviously, animated films aside, I think animation is going to flower because you're not dealing with live people. You're dealing with voices in studios and you're dealing with artists. I think anime is going to become emergent as a serious art form that's not cartoony. You're going to, I think, people's lines of vision, whether you want to have forefront and back and backdrop and 1080p or whatever the going standard is of technology, people don't care as much. They really care about what's going on in the foreground.
Yeah, they care about the storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about
they care about great characters, and a great idea. I think you're right. I think you're right, Lee. Very much there. Let me ask Gabe the same question. And again, I'm gonna have to move. I got so many great questions here, and they're all related in some way. So we'll have to move along here. But I want to ask Gabe the same thing. Gabe, do you think the movie theater closures have hurt the film business anyway, or will theatrical recover? And what's your take on this last year that we had?
Well, we'll soon find out. I'm the only person I know who's got a movie coming in the theaters in a month. And, it's kind of exciting to say, hey, let's roll the dice, because I think the studios and the distributors are playing catch up. And guys like you and me are at the forefront. For the first time in history, they're looking at the filmmaker to kind of lead the way. And everything that I'm experiencing in this theatrical push I'm going through right now doesn't reflect in any way, shape, or form any other past experience.
We're in a brand new world, aren't we?
We are, and we're still learning. But I'd rather learn on the hull of the ship than in a stinky engine room with sweat going down my face. That the engine could explode at any minute.
Before I move on to Scott to get some of his thoughts on this, let me ask you, Gabe. And I wish I'd asked Lee this, but we'll come back around in a minute maybe on this. But what do you think about this day and date model? And for those in the viewership out there who don't know what that means, of course you do know what it means. It's just the thing where now the studios are doing the release in the theater as the same day as they release it streaming or on cable. So how do you feel about this day and date model? Do you think it's going to hold up? Is it viable? Is it the future, or is it a Band-Aid? Gabe?
Oh, goodness me. Again, it's I have no idea. I'm very fascinated with this lawsuit.
The one with Scarlett Johansson?
Yep, with Scarlett Johansson.
Where Scarlett Johansson's suing Disney right now because they didn't live up to the contract. She believed a lot of her money was going to come from the theatrical portion of, and so then she's not getting any portion of the Disney Plus streaming revenue, is she?
No.
And I believe that's what the fight is about, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, my mother sued Columbia and won. She never made a big studio movie again, went back into independent filmmaking. And so I guess to be a woman now suing the studio, it's a whole different ball game. And, I see both sides of the coin. And I totally understand the need to have to go to a streaming service so that your own business model doesn't collapse. I mean, they literally have to put stuff on this new platform, Disney Plus. But at the same token, they have to be honest.
It is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say it's
they have to be honest.
Unusual. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Honest in the contract. They didn't give the option that that it could, or it might, or it will go to their streaming services first. And that's what I believe that
Black Widow has made over 300 and something million between the two, between theatrical and the streaming. That's the number I read, some big number. Let's go to Scott for 1 second here. Let's get Scott into conversation here. Again, I don't really want to ask the exact same question, but I think what the zone we're talking about here is, Scott, is sort of the theatrical closures because of the COVID, how it hurt the industry, how maybe it's changing the industry. I'm even going to move my next question. Could it have helped the industry of streaming? Are we moving that way? And again, I know I've asked you a lot of questions here, and what about this day-to-date model? Is this going to hold up, do you think? Or is this a temp thing? Or is this the way it is from now on?
Well, I think I echo the sentiments of the other panelists where we don't really know.
Right.
But from a consumer standpoint, they've proven they want it now, wherever they can get it, however they can get it. And so that's driving a lot of this. I think it'll be interesting if some of these exhibitors go into bankruptcy, whether you'd see somebody like Disney come in and buy the studios, the theaters. They got the restaurant where they've got the little, Finding Nemo burger, and like Apple.
Mm-hmm.
They could all do this. I look at it from the writing perspective, from a writer's perspective,
which is great. Thank you.
And that is that, with over 500 plus series on streaming between broadcast network, basic cable, pay cable, and streaming, I think that's going to continue. There's always going to be a need for film. So then it just becomes like, what are you doing as a writer? And they're always going to need content, and they can't make projects without the script, unless it's some sort of improvisational thing. So I do know this. I mean, I talk to managers and agents. Nobody wants to do a COVID movie. So that would be one piece of advice.
It's amazing.
Don't be writing a COVID movie.
How few masks we have seen on TV shows that we know have been filming since COVID broke in March of 2020. It's amazing how no one is showing the masks.
Well, I think you can take a tip from Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is like the reverse of the anti-hero movies we've been seeing or TV series we've been seeing in the last 15 years. People are finding that refreshing, an upbeat, optimistic guy. So maybe there's something going on there where people want to be uplifted in terms of the content that they see. So from a writing standpoint, I just think that it's important to continue to plow the course, keep going, go ahead. But, they're always going to need content, period.
No Scott, you got a lot of experience, a lot of different kinds of projects. Let me ask you this. So just in kind of a follow-up question here. So do you think, from a writer's perspective, what a writer's going to write, do you think a writer should be concerned about whether they think they're going to they're aiming for a theatrical type, I'm writing a movie for theaters, or I'm writing a movie for, even if it's a movie, not a TV show, but a movie, the difference between small screen versus big screen, is there a difference, or what's your thought about that?
Well, there's an increasing convergence. I mean, how can you look at anything like Game of Thrones and not think that that's theatrical in terms of its tone, in terms of its
Absolutely.
special effects and visuality. But to me,
you're actually
you
jumping
can't
ahead
chase
to
the
my
market.
next question, but, but
As a
ahead.
writer, I don't think you can chase the market. I think you need to write the stories that you feel that are meaningful to you. You got to have passion for them, but that you feel you'd want to see. And whether it's a TV series or a film, doesn't matter. That's related to the characters. That's related to the concept. Let that dictate what you write. But you can't. We have no idea what the market's going to be like. We have no idea whether the theatrical is going to be anywhere.
Okay, well, you know what? Let me ask Lee Caplin. Let me keep moving around here. And again, we're still kind of in the same. We're still in the same kind of discussion in general here. My friend Scott Gimple, who runs the entire Walking Dead universe on TV. He was a showrunner for 5 years, but now he runs all 3 shows. I had a conversation recently with him, and we were talking about streaming and cable TV and how now they have movie stars and it feels more movie quality, these kind of streaming and especially the HBO and Showtime shows, and even if they're serialized. And he said a very interesting thing to me. He said, it's all becoming one now. So Lee, what do you think about that comment?
Well, I think it's sort of all becoming one. I mean, as home theaters become more like Cineplex theaters in people's homes, and you can get big screen TVs for as cheaply as you can, I think people covet the ability to have a home screening room.
We have half your head, Lee. There you go. There we go.
It used to be the TV room. Now it's a screening room. But
right.
I think the big theater, unless some major changes are made, is never going to recover. And I agree with my co-panelist who said, write the story, don't write for the medium. I mean, if you see it big, write it big. If you just see it without big or small, write it in outer space and have it be the size that you can get it to have it out there. But I think, the Scarlett Johansson thing was really failure of her lawyers to battle for all media whenever shown so that she could get the revenue stream. I'm interested in the numbers that you just quoted.
Right. No, I just read it yesterday in Variety, which I know you were part of. You were part of a corporation that you built a magazine or Mail.com, which eventually became a company that Penske ended up owning, that owns Rolling Stone and Variety magazine. And I was reading it in Variety magazine. Actually, and I was thinking about you, and I was. It's humongous numbers, but it's a telltale sign. That wouldn't you say, Lee, the fact that she must have negotiated this contract in 2019 before the COVID. I'm guessing, and like you said, the failure of her lawyers, they didn't even know to ask for the streaming service money because it wasn't in mid 2019. That wasn't even a thing.
It wasn't enough to worry about, but it's always been there, of course, and. It's like what they used to say, I have this trouble with the Faulkner estate. The movie companies bought what they thought were the film rights. And they say in all media, however known, whatever devised in perpetuity, and they didn't know what was coming up, but they tried to grab it all. I don't know if they were allowed to grab it all. They didn't grab it all in our case for a variety of reasons, but I think.
No, that's true. And you and I have, full disclosure to our audience, Lee and I have made a film together. He produced a film that I wrote called The Forger that was turned out to be Lauren Bacall's final film. But in 2012, it came out. But Lee and I have been through some contracts together. And that's exactly right. There's that clause, right? In any medium yet even to be devised.
Right.
Right? It's that phrase that's like, that, presumes that there will be new technologies and new media that are being developed.
And so it's happening, it's happening in the music business too, because you've got music that's where people will come in and they'll make different versions of somebody else's song. They'll make a club version, they'll make a Muzak version, they'll make a, who knows what version, and all these different little needle drops that they play in elevators and supermarkets and advertising. And they've got services all around that if you're a member of ASCAP or BMI or CSAC or whatever, that they go like termites around the world and try to squeeze the money out from you. I think probably the collection portion of the unions are going to get their act together, and they're going to do that for the actors, and they're going to be entitled to getting their fair share of everything and anything, anytime, in perpetuity, however devised. I think that's being worked out now. which is hard to
By
imagine.
any media yet even to be devised.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as lawyers, we try to come up with phraseology that would capture everything,
Right.
but the courts don't really let you capture everything. You're supposed to, know that if they're going to be streaming it on Mars, that unless you made provision for it, you're not going to get that piece of the streaming pie. But again, to go back to the other thing, I think when writers write, they envision the size of the image. I can't imagine that a writer wouldn't. I know as a painter, I paint with a size in mind. If I want to see it really, really big, I'll paint it really big. If I want it small, I'll paint it small. But quite frankly, some things that were made to be big look better on the small screen. And as you correctly point out, it's no longer a scarlet letter to say that you're a movie actor who now acts on TV. And if you're
Right.
TV,
Well, we've seen that Julia Roberts was in a streaming a mini series. I mean, we're just the list of A-list actors who are showing up in
Meryl
streaming
Streep.
Go on, please.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying Meryl Streep. It was she.
Yeah,
she was
Right,
on,
Scott, thank you.
Big
Yeah,
Little-
exactly.
Big Little
Things are
Lies,
cynical.
I mean,
Right, and there we got three major actresses.
yeah. When we did True Detective, I think maybe we weren't the first, but we certainly were an early form of TV that filmed it like a movie. And I think
Right,
that's
the first season, and I love that
First
show, by
season.
the way.
Yes,
I
season one.
love it. I mean, the first season you had Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Who were the stars in the second season? I can't remember now.
Forgettable. In the third season, almost recouped, but not quite. But I think the first season it was a movie broken up, and I think now when we've got our scripts, when I go to sell them, nobody really wants to invest in a movie because the idea that you spend a year conceiving of it, a year making it, a year distributing it, and then the rest of your life chasing down the revenues, it doesn't sound like a very good business. But if it's on TV, it's all digital, so you can call up the numbers right away.
Right.
You don't have
you got one chance. You got one chance to get your money back. If people don't like that one show, I mean, the 2-hour film, you're out. But on a TV show, you've got multiple episodes to try to win them over.
But now we're asking writers when they write the scripts, if you were to divide it into 6 parts, how would you divide it? And then the problem is that a story that's meant to be 90 or 120 minutes, does it fall apart if it's spread too thin over too many episodes? Does it become like a shaggy dog story? On the other hand, if you've got a writer like Faulkner who basically wrote, metaphysical shaggy dog stories, and how do you squeeze a 500-page book down to 90 minutes, then it becomes better. You've got 10 episodes, so get there, and you can take the divertissements.
Let me ask Gabriel this question, because again, I can't believe it, but time is running quickly here. I want to say this personally. I've had as a writer, I probably didn't introduce myself, which I should have done. I've written 7 films, made 2 documentaries, blah 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 blah. Okay, whatever. But personally, I've had the experience where a company's bought one of my screenplays for a film screenplay, a 2-hour meant for theatrical, and then they move it around and they're aiming to make it into a streaming show, but they won't allow me to work on the TV show because I'm a movie writer, not a TV writer. So, Gabe, do you see more movie screenplays becoming potential source material for streaming and cable serialized shows?
Oh, definitely. It's like the Wild West with television now. I mean, the bar has been raised so high that it's now the gold standard television that films are now hoping to, emulate. I mean, you've seen shows like Gomorrah and 000, and that's just a whole other universe. And I really hope that filmmakers can keep pushing the envelope. And I think it's interesting mentioning 000 and Gomorrah and many other Italian series. I think it's fascinating because the Italians who invented modern cinema really for the past 20, 30 years have making the worst movies ever. And all of a sudden they've had this incredible renaissance of television that they kind of made their own, much the way they made neorealism or magical realism their own when in the early ages. And that's what I'd really like to see happen in film. I'd like to see somebody push the envelope and create something that people can't even compare it to. But I have to say something funny that I was thinking about that Scott said, you're so right about you can't pander to the world, COVID, right? You can't be too on the head, too on the nose, because people don't want that. And yet it's so funny because I've been watching our social media feed about the reaction to our movie, right? It's a comedy made by Joel Zwick, who did My Big Fat Greek Wedding, about
Tango Shalom.
Yeah, a Hasidic Jew who enters a dance competition, and the beautiful tango dancer he can't touch. So how does he do it? He's a rabbi. And so many people were saying, I identify with that because I can't touch someone else because of COVID. And we wrote the script in 2008 when there was an economic downturn. So this is a character who's down on his luck. We shot it when business was booming in the world, right? 2016, 17, right? Well, now look what happened. So now here's a guy who's down on his luck, and people can even relate to that. So it just goes to show you have to do what's right for the story, right. And cancel out the din.
Right.
That's great advice. And again, I think you're right in pointing out Scott Meyer's point about you got to write what you're passionate about. It's not going to work trying to meet the market because the market's moving so fast. I'm kind of adding to what he said. Actually, I'm not paraphrasing Scott anymore. Now I'm adding to what he said. But I believe what he was aiming at saying as well is that the market's moving so fast that there's actually kind of it's a stupidity in a kind of way to think you can actually track the market. Because by the time you've finished the screenplay or the teleplay or the Bible that you're writing, the market's already changed. And it's gone like that. The thing that you were aiming for is gone. So, I think Scott was dead right about saying, I believe that same thing. You got to write what you're passionate about, what you really believe in. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to write something that you think you're supposed to write. That's just never going to work. It just doesn't. It doesn't work.
If I can follow up on that, if I can just quick follow up on that.
Please.
Because, we've all been in rooms with the suits on the other side. They pick up on the passion. They want to see that. That's part of the project is the creator and the passion they have for it. So it's not just about you putting derriere into chair and actually writing the thing, which you need passion for. It's also about what you bring to the project yourself, and also the passion that's exhibited on the page. So yeah, it's hugely important.
I think I couldn't have. I didn't even. That's a great point, Scott. That I think all of our panelists would agree that passion is exactly what it's the X factor. You can take all the classes, do all the work, make it all perfect, but if you don't really love this thing, no one else is. Let me ask Scott. I'm going to still stick with Scott for 1 second. Scott, do big stars matter as much in a small screen world?
I think that I have a colleague at DePaul, Brad Riddell, who says that screenplays are actor bait. And I think that's still relevant. Yeah, we've got the whole superhero Marvel movies and whatnot. And you could argue that
actor bait.
that you could argue that the CGI, all the special effects are the A talent. So, but if you're doing indie films or if you're doing even mainstream movies, you want to have those names.
You can't get hold on. I'm going to stop you right there because you just said a phrase that it's almost like, ooh, indie films. Does that even exist? Is there? I know they do, but are indie films now going to be made in the future to be put on television? Because we're not really talking theatrical anymore. Or are we? And again, I know we've already covered this, and all of the panelists have agreed we don't know what the future is yet. And I was kind of curious to see that all three of you agreed pretty universally. There is no consensus as to what the future of theatrical is. But that phrase, indie films, I'm sorry to stop you, but you literally hit a button. What do you think is the future of indie film, Scott?
Well, I mean, if I had to speculate about the theatrical business, I think it'd be the big budget films that people want to see in huge screens with an audience on the opening weekend. So there are always going to be room for that. And then for, people who love movies like myself and my age group, we love movies. And so there's always going to be room for those kind of films, particularly now that the cost of filmmaking is much less than it used to be with digital technology and whatnot. Because of my blog, I get a press pass to Sundance. So I go to Sundance every year. Last year, I went independent, remotely. And there were some fantastic films. I mean, just tremendous films. When do you see this movie Coda, Children of Deaf Adults, that's coming out, sold for $25 million. It's a mainstream. It's not really an indie film, but I mean, I think there will always be. Look, there's always. When disco was around, I was a musician.
Where do you think it's going to show? And again, we're kind of wrapping up our state of the industry kind of section here, but
okay.
Where do you think a film like that is going to actually make its money back from? Just out of curiosity, who's going to pay for that back? I mean, I know they made their money from the sale to the distributor, but I'm saying now the distributor, who's he going to get his money back from?
Well, the streaming services are pretty reluctant to acknowledge their revenues and the sort of viewership. But
your first guess is streaming.
Yeah, I think that it'll have a theatrical release as well. But I mean, it's good.
But that's kind of that's kind of more fanfare now. I mean, we're kind of coming to a point where for the smaller films, it seems like the theatrical is fanfare, almost promotional, and not actually. Lee, can I get over Lee? Because you were talking about making small films yourself with limited locations, limited resources. What do you think about that? Is theatrical sometimes now just kind of fanfare for small films, indie films? Is it realistic that they're going to make money? Or
I think the theatrical return of investment for indie films is limited. I always have, you see something like a Napoleon Dynamite or whatever, every once in a while a film will come along that's so oddball, so fresh. 13, some of these movies that if the budget is low enough, you can recoup. The concept of P&A is no longer what P&A was, so that you don't have these P&A funds in the same way that you're going to duplicate the budget of the film with prints and ads and a big campaign. The marketing has changed. The recoupment pattern has changed. The in-between costs have changed, and the forensic accounting is prohibitively expensive. You pay a third of what you think you're owed to get an accountant. If you remember the Art Buchwald case with Coming to America and Eddie Murphy, and at the end of all the millions and millions of dollars that he spent in trying to recoup his money or to prove that they had even taken a small concept and made a big movie, they were trying to define net profits. And they went to litigation over that, and one of the line items that I think Warner Brothers
talk about some lawyer talk
had hidden.
Here's a good question for you, Lee. Has a distributor ever told the truth?
No, I think this
once in the history of has it ever happened once?
I think it's an oxymoron. Distribution and truth telling. It's not a possibility.
Right.
Don't forget, in the early days of cinema, you had to go around and count ticket stubs. That's how they did the accounting. Literally, right. Lowe's had to count ticket stubs. Now at least it's digital, but then proving it is another matter, particularly once you're outside the United States.
Well, it's that phrase that you said, forensic accounting. That and I'm very aware of that phrase, and I know that it happens on every movie that's semi-successful. It almost seems like inevitable that there's going to be lawyers that have to actually look at the books and try to figure out what really happened.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really hard to find out because it's so sophisticated now when you cook the books and so forth. I think it's sort of actuarial morality. I'll pay you if you can prove I owe you, and if you can make me pay you, you'll get the money. I mean, it's not a very happy proposition. And I think that, Lee, thanks for all your points there. It's something that, everyone needs to know. We're going to have to move on to the next section pretty soon here. I just want to ask Scott one last question on state of the industry. And then we're going to move into tips and advice for our aspiring writers who are
make up about 80, 90% of our, well, I don't know, but it's definitely above 80% of our viewership are aspiring writers. So we're going to have to get to that. But last question, Scott, before we move on, because I do like talking about the new stuff that's happening, state of the industry. So Scott, one question for you. How do you feel about the effect of video games, online games, and VR gaming on the entire entertainment industry?
Well, they dwarf, video game sales dwarf film revenues. I mean, it's just huge. And I think it has impacted the young generation now for 30 years, been playing video games, maybe even a little bit longer, that they look for an interactive component. They want to, I think that they need less exposition in stories. They want to jump into stories more quickly. That's why we have a lot of cold,
right there. That's a great point. Go on.
Cold
please.
Opens, just drop us in and let us figure things out. So from a storytelling standpoint, I think that's one change. But I know if you have got a lot of novelists out there, I interviewed T.J. Newman, who has a best-selling book right now called Falling that sold the movie rights to Universal for 7 figures. She told me that she wrote that book like a movie, and I think that you're seeing this a lot more on that side of things. But in terms of video games,
I'm definitely seeing that where book writers are definitely taking a cue from the movies and from TV. But now I'm starting. I mean, I guess what you said was very interesting right there to me about the newer generation. If they're going to watch your movie, I have a 15-year-old son. It's really hard to get him to watch a 2-hour movie. It's like an old timers medium for him. It's like, that's for old timers. 2-hour movies. Who sits around for 2 hours? They have YouTube. They've got TikTok. They watch stuff 5 minutes, then another 5 minutes, then another 10-minute, then a 5-minute, then a 3-minute clip. And so that thing you said about drop us in, less exposition, drop us in the story and just start running. I remember
Larry Gordon produced
please,
K9. Larry Gordon produced K9, and he told me, you got to have a whammo every 10 minutes. And I think that's reduced now. I think you got to be thinking like every 5 minutes, something going on,
Right. Ironically,
they'll watch TV series. They'll say, oh yeah, I can't watch a movie. It's too long, 2 hours, but then they'll binge 6 hours of TV,
right.
So.
No, that's exactly, that's so right. I mean, if as long as there's no commercials, as long as they can get around the commercials. I mean, someone said to me the other day, HBO really only had one secret in the beginning: no commercials. It really came down to, and now, of course, they've moved on beyond that and they've done a whole lot of other stuff. So why don't we switch gears now so that we can give some of our aspiring writers a little bit of advice. Let's start with Gabriel right now. Gabriel, what kind of material makes you impressed by a newer writer?
I like to see a story that I've never seen, because honestly, I feel like I've seen every mafia movie ever made. I've seen every Vietnam movie ever made. Now, could you never make another mafia movie? You sure could. Could you ever make another Vietnam story? You sure could. But I want to see it from an entirely different perspective. For example, there's a Holocaust movie coming out now. It's about a dog in the Holocaust. Evidently, the first laws of Nuremberg were to forbid Jews from owning pets. And it's this one singular story. Wow. Okay, that's a story I haven't seen before, because we haven't seen every Holocaust story that's been out there, even though we feel we have, because people aren't digging deeper to find a more singular, unique tale.
Lee, can I ask you the same question? What kind of material makes you, as a renowned producer, what kind of material makes you impressed by a newer writer?
I think going back to what was just said, the guy who was a pair of writers that wrote the original story that became The Deer Hunter. The original story was bookended by a Steel Town love story. So the Steel Town love story was a bookend to the thing that they wrote, which was all the stuff that you saw in Vietnam and the spinning of the revolver cylinders and the Russian roulette part and all that stuff was there.
The Christopher Walken, the famous Chris Walken scene.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that particular scene, that scene wasn't written by Quentin Tarantino, interestingly enough. Roger Avery wrote all those cool scenes. The scene about the watch disappearing in the nether region.
I was talking about the Chris Walken scene in the Deer Hunter.
With
the Russian roulette scene. Yeah. I was like that scene is stuck with people. So what you're saying is the kind of material that attracts you is what exactly?
Well, Rediker and Garfinkel wrote that, and Quentin Rediker, who spent his time writing when he was waiting his next scene as a soap opera actor. He was a famous soap opera actor, but he actually wrote that thing, won an Academy Award for it. But he said, take them, show them something they've never seen before, and take them to a place they've never been before, and create dialogue that befits what you've just done and accomplished with the viewer. If it's fresh, if it's told in a fresh way, if it's like, oh my God, I never would have thought of it in that way. That's what I like about the concept of a new writer. What really depressed me about what you just said a minute ago about, so many novelists are writing novels in order to make them into movies. You're thinking, can you imagine? I suppose all the famous painters of the Renaissance were painting for princes and kings and popes. And I remember that famous the New Yorker cartoon, and I think Leonardo da Vinci is showing the painting to some rich guy that commissioned the painting, and the caption is, "Could you put a few more angels in the picture?" And I think that's what's happening. But you've always had that throughout history. The artist was always the dancing bear for the people with the money, and so I guess it's no surprise that a writer who's writing his novel or her novel is saying, "Gee, it'd be great if it could also be a TV show." But what a shame, to kill the artistic spirit and the artistic process by thinking of like, how are you going to market it? Well, I'm making the story too long because it's never going to be enough time for commercials.
I think one commonality between what you and Gabe said, at least at the beginning of what you started talking about, it seems like you and Gabe both said pretty much almost the same thing. Something I've never seen before. And not only that, but that it come from a fresh perspective.
Right. Right. Everything is hackneyed. Joseph Campbell was right in the one sense, and these screenwriting courses that say, I'll give you the 100 or 200 cosmic plots that you can use any way you want, the Romeo and Juliet plot or what have you. Somebody still could take that and make West Side Story out of it. And I'm thinking to myself, how dare Spielberg think he's going to make something better than what Robbins and Bernstein and everybody did for West Side Story. But guess what? He's probably going to do it, even without Jerome Robbins' dance. So except for then you take the Peter Pan story, you put the same Spielberg on top of it, not to bash a talented guy, but I didn't really want to see the Lost Boys on skateboards. It didn't do anything for me. I like I preferred the Robin Williams scene in the auditorium with all the orphans honoring Maggie Smith with the candlelight reflecting in their faces. What a movie moment, So if you can think cinematically and write cinematically, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of writers write that way because they see pictures in their heads. Other writers don't write that way. They write according to an outline that they put together with character, structure, and dialogue. So there are a lot of ways to skin the cat. I'm just looking for a fresh new one.
Right, a fresh new one. That's a good point right there. A fresh new one. Scott, let me ask you this: what do you think about for newer writers? We're talking about like when you're putting your initial package together, one screenplay, two, whatever. You're the first thing you're going to present to industry or to someone that you might want to try to get some attention from. High concept versus smaller highbrow affair. So high concept, highbrow. Where's the line there, and what do you see?
Well, it's so hard to get original material made nowadays. Hollywood is so obsessed with pre-existing content and remakes and reboots and sequels and prequels and sequels that it's hard to get original. So you do have, I don't like the phrase high concept as much as strong concept. It's got to have a strong story concept.
All right. I like that.
So because it's got to come down to marketing. You got to be able to cut through the noise out there to do something, To me, it all comes down to character, really. The point that Gabriel made about that Holocaust movie from the dog's perspective, that's the character. It's the dog, right? And so, I sum up this for my students. I say a story is a character we care about confronting a complex challenge is created by a compelling crisis. So it's a bunch of C's there, but it's all about the character. You know, you talk about actor bait. Well, that's, if you write strong characters, you're more likely to get them. Moreover, that's the same with TV. You know, if you go and pitch a TV series, you write the pilot script, 90% of those meetings is spent about what are the characters going to be like in episode 202 or 315. So to me, when I look at new material from writers, I want to know that they can write strong characters, they write compelling characters. But yeah, absolutely, they got to have a strong story concept.
Gabriel, let me ask you this. You know, a lot of entertainment critics say shows like The Sopranos, Mad Men, The Wire, even Game of Thrones have led the way to making TV tougher and more gritty than theatrical movies, because Hollywood in the theater has had such a you know, it's such a high budget. Although the Game of Thrones was not, that was no, you know, that was not a small budget endeavor. But do you think that writers who are coming into business right now, is there, I mean, let's say you hadn't started yet. You haven't made a single project yet. You've been writing for a while, but you're trying to get your first thing made. You think they're better off writing a TV show? I mean, writing some kind of sample for streaming or cable, or do you think they're better off writing a feature film?
I think they have to write what speaks to them. If it makes them homeless while they're doing it, so be it. You know, the Greek word daemon that the Christians turned into demon meant a spirit that forces you to face your creative potential. And you have to listen to your daemon. You have to listen to that thing inside you that's driving you mad. And you have no idea why you've got to put this down, because that's really the only reason people went to go see The Deer Hunter or watched the show The Sopranos, is because somebody listened here and not here. You got to listen with your gut. And I think that is the greatest danger that we have today, is people are trying to put the cart before the horse. And honestly, we see it. We see it in film. We see it in television. When people are pretty much pandering to you.
Lee, how do you feel about that?
Well, I you know, I'm not a big proponent of making sizzle reels or demos or, you know, 15-minute versions of something that's supposed to be long. I've advised a lot of people, it may be off topic. I've advised a lot of people to take the idea, several things are happening at once. Number one, you can't copyright an idea. So you'd like to have something that memorializes the idea that you can copyright. So if somebody copies the copyrighted material, you can go after them and stop them from stealing your idea. Or on the other hand, are there any new ideas anyway? And if somebody borrows it and makes it into theirs, have you, you know, is it just flattery that they thought enough of it to copy? But I've advised people sometimes to do live theater and to do a play, because you don't really need any pre-production and post-production expenditures like you do with a movie. And one thing that's nice about Hollywood is that there's so many tiny theaters where you can invite people. You can invite studio executives to see something. And I've done that before, where you have them in and you basically have the cast that you'd like to put in the movie, with some exceptions, because some stage actors simply don't translate to screen and vice versa. But I think, and also the style of writing for theater is a little bit different than it is for movies. But sometimes if you look at a guy like David Mamet, everything seems to be a live theater thing that was filmed. It always seems like a play to me. So he's sort of punted in that area. He doesn't write it the way Tarantino writes. He writes the way he writes it, and he controls everybody's dialogue to make it surrealistic, so you don't really know what or where is happening, and you're thrown off balance when you're watching something, which gets your attention, makes you feel uncomfortable, so that that the tension of the movie is raised. But I think live theater is a good way to explicate ideas and then to take it a step further into a small film.
Are you saying it's the best final format? Or are you saying it's the best way to kind of get the juices flowing?
To get it going. It could be a final format, because I mean, you've seen TV shows that have become movies, you've seen movies that become TV shows, you've seen plays that have become movies, you've seen play versions of movies. I mean, right now, all rules are off the table. There's no set way. And for me, it's getting actors and situations together where you can actually hear and feel the sum and substance of what the dialogue is supposed to be. I've seen writers write stuff on the paper that human beings would never say. You can never film it. It's just too long, as interesting as it may be to read. So, have it a real situation and see how it plays. It's like doing a table reading for a movie, but then taking it to another level, or maybe start filming table readings, or maybe table readings with props, something that gives you a theatrical experience, even if it's shot on video or an iPhone or, 16 mil or 8. I mean, I think the movie 13 used every film medium known to man. They had 13, 16, Super 8, 35. I mean, whatever they could get, they were filming with pieces of celluloid that they bought from, discarded rolls of film just to get the film made. And it gets back to the passion, gets back, then you can make that the gritty aspect of it part of the statement. I mean, why does it have to be so polished like a Simpson Bruckheimer, Tom Cruise, this or that? It doesn't have to be that at all. I mean, Last Tango in Paris, or what was that one with the Brooke Shield that they shot where you could see the boom, you could see the guy in the mirror holding the mic, and you saw the mechanics of the film in the film. They didn't even bother to edit it out. It was Bertolucci or somebody. But I mean, getting it out there in a film format is the most important. I don't think anybody will go for like a sizzler or summary. I mean, people are not putting money into development these days. If they can see something, if you invite them to, it's like what we used to do for backers auditions for Broadway plays. We'd invite them to a reading, the money people in for a reading, and you can invite the money people in for a stage reading with actors, and it could be quite exciting. And it's a work of theater, yes, but it's also a work of money raising for the film, and people become part of it. They want to be part of it.
We're running out of time here. I think we got 3 minutes left is what they're looking at. For me, I do have a couple questions here from our Facebook group. I want to just get one or two of these out. I'm so sorry, all of you Facebook viewers that didn't get your questions in. I believe there's a way for you to drop them into our the chat, and we can try to pass them on to our panelists. But please, they're not, the panelists weren't even aware that might happen. So don't expect a response, but if you get one, that'd be a nice thing, but we'll see. This is for Scott from Ann G. Which genres are easiest for a writer to break into the business with?
Well, I'm not sure. Again, that's sort of chasing the market. I would agree with what Gabriel's saying. You got to write it for what you're interested in. If you're an action writer, write action. If you're a comedy writer, write comedy. I do think that there are genres that are popular, but they ebb and flow. I've been tracking the spec market since '87 when I broke in, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just they always change. So just find something that you're passionate about and write that. It would make sense for you to study the genre. If you're an action writer, then you need to watch every action movie there ever is and look at all the tropes and learn all that stuff. But I would say, find something you're passionate about and write that, period.
Okay. We're going to give one to each of you. I got one more here this one's for Gabriel. What advice would you give a writer who wants to work in film, TV, or streaming? Should all their scripts be, again, this is for newer, I believe the person means for newer writers. Should all their scripts be in one genre, their strongest, or should they have 2 or 3 different genres as they're trying to, they're kind of doing first presentation to someone, a manager or something. One genre, two scripts, one genre, or 2 scripts, different genres? I think
Duke Ellington
said that is Dave J.
Yeah. Duke Ellington said the secret to being a great musician is only playing what you've mastered. And I think
you're saying one genre, just do
play
what
you've mastered. If you mastered many genres, fine.
Right, but do what
you've mastered.
Okay, that's great advice. I like that. I've always had a conflicting feeling about that but boy, that's a great piece of advice there. And this one's for Lee Caplin. Lee, wait, this is from Dana S. What about approaching managers, agents, and producers? Any common wisdom about the idea of approaching managers first? Is that true? And if so, how do you meet one? That's a big question.
How do you meet a manager?
Should you approach a manager first, or an agent first, or a producer straight up? Or is there?
It's funny. When I first came to Hollywood, my dad's law partner ran Columbia Pictures, Fay Vincent. He later became the commissioner of baseball, but he introduced me to a guy named Ray Stark, who had produced a lot of famous movies. And before he was a producer, he was actually the manager of Fanny Bryce. But he was a manager, agent, and he was like one of the first and one of the last old time producers. And I said, how do you become a producer? Because that's what I wanted to do. And he told me a producer is a person whose best friend is a writer. And I never forgot it. And I think, writers have to remember how important they are to the process. There was a guy that worked for me once, and he went to work for Scott Rudin. And he called me up and he said, I have 5 scripts here. And he says, these are not Scott Rudin movies. So I don't know anything about these, but we have the rights till the end of the week. And so I'll give you the rights until the rest of the week. And I was so busy that I had a guy that I had hired from UCLA to read scripts, and I gave him the top script, all by the same writer. And he writes me back a sort of a tepid B plus coverage. And he says at the end of the coverage, this is an interesting story, quirky story. He said, but who really wants a movie that has people like Mr. Pink, Mr. White, and Mr. Black? And Tarantino had written all 5 of those. Those were the 5 big ones that became his career, all of them, every one of them. And I passed on every one of them. First of all, I didn't read any of them. I had a reader read one of them. And I tell it as kind of a self-deprecating joke. It's not much of a joke. But I mean, having a manager, it depends on how well you know these people. If you're a networking person, it's fine to meet people. I mean, you have to be licensed to be an agent. You do not have to be licensed to be a manager. Anyone can be a manager. And managers, they can be big time guys like Jason Weinberg, who gets to be a producer because he's a manager.
I'm sorry. Just to kind of clarify you up here. I'm sorry, Lee. Are you kind of saying, if you're social and you're kind of a networking kind of person, because this is our last question, we're wrapping up here. Are you trying to say, if you're social and you're a networker, getting a manager is great, but it seems to me like your implication of what you're saying is there's nothing wrong with going straight to a producer.
Exactly. I would go to a producer.
Is that the kind of point of what you're trying to make there?
Right. Yeah. Let each category do what the category is supposed to do. If a producer reads something and likes it, they're going to do all the stuff that the writer's going to run himself or herself ragged trying to do and not do very well, because that's not what writers do. Writers write. Producers produce. They hustle. They do what they have to do to attach people. And they're going to go to a manager with stars. They're going to go to an agent with clients. They're going to go to maybe different people at different levels, depending on what the budget may be. But I would definitely send something to a producer. I wouldn't send it to an agent. What it does is it goes to the bottom of a very, very,
well, there we go, folks. We got it from the horse's mouth. And of course, let's also not forget, he is a producer. So
you're right.
So, he might be.
I think he just called you a horse, Lee.
Yeah,
I got that part.
He might be a little prejudiced, but you know what? I'll be honest.
He's called me worse. I'd take anything from Carlos.
In my own career, I actually kind of did that. I always thought I was going to go to managers and agents first, but by and large, I went to producers first, and that's kind of. So I actually think Lee's advice there for all you new writers is actually a great way to end our panel today, because I do believe exactly what Lee said. I wish we had more time, and please enjoy the rest of the day. There's more Tayeri Jones coming up, I think right after this, I believe, or very soon. So please stick around
right after
for more
this
stuff. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, and thanks to my
Thank
panel.
you, Carlos. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Gabriel. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate your time.